All right. As soon as it looks like somebody has landed in the chat room, I will begin. Says there's two people. Somebody throw me a thumbs up or a heart or a comment. Oop, there we go. Looks like there's somebody there. And I'm going to hit record. And here we go. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Jana, Maya, thank you for joining me. Hope everybody is having a wonderful day. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to file in before we get started on the meat of the matter. But for those who are here so far, how's it going today? It's weird to be here without Danny. Zoo, Dina, Dr. Laura, the lovely and talented Dr. Laura, as Robert says about Joan, but he says Joan and not Laura. Bubs, Pavs, thank you everybody for joining me. I'm always a little anxious about doing these by myself. It feels weird to feel like I'm talking to nobody, even though I know all of you are there. This is a skill I'm going to be working a lot on this year. So thanks for coming along for the ride and being patient with me while I hone my craft. Anywho, all right. Well, just to while we wait for a few more people to get here, Danny is of course off grid, and there are all sorts of things. Hold on a second. I can hear Laura listening to me in the other room, and it's too loud. Laura, turn it down. Um, yeah, so there's all kinds of goodies waiting for us and for her. Laura, turn it down when we get back, when she gets back, including Adam Curry on Joe Rogan, followed by Mike Baker on Joe Rogan. And of course, these two came right after Mike Benz on Joe Rogan. And we have noticed this trend before that they often tend to follow up a somewhat controversial or slightly less controlled or slightly opposing the orthodox of the controlled, sort of narrative type of thing. So I look forward to chatting about some of that with her when she's back next week. But for now, I'm solo and we are going to get going here. Oh, and interesting, as I'm about to start talking about Maglev, I hear the train coming. I don't think you guys can hear it because the microphone does a pretty decent job at canceling out the noise. So I titled this stream Maglev Mind Map. And I've been wanting to do this one for a while. I was initially going to just do a solo stream on a Monday evening and just call it Mind Map Mondays. And the first topic was going to be this Maglev, but that just hasn't happened yet. And so since Danny's gone and we have this sort of spot here on Wednesdays, I thought I'd give it a shot today. So what this was inspired by all of the thoughts that I had almost instantaneously as soon as I saw a specific visual on an Instagram that I watched, probably more 6 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe more than that ago now, right? And I realized like my mind does that with a lot of things, and that this is kind of the way that I map out ideas and that I begin to play sort of connect the dots, and that I thought it would be interesting to show you guys like a little bit of like how my mind starts to put things together, especially for those of you who haven't been longtime followers or don't listen to all of the things behind the paywall where sort of my process is a little bit more obvious. I wanted to kind of like show you guys the way I unpack ideas, which is a little bit different than the way, a lot of other people do. It's not like I have a lot of what we call the hard and fast or traditional research skills. And on some level, I make use of that. But I need something a little less boring than that. I need to be able to hop around and to play and to use my intuition and to like throw sort of odd spitballs and what about this and what if that, and express this strange way that my mind wants to connect things that, like, according to linear time and regular logic shouldn't be connected. But for me, the feeling of connection is so instant that there's something there, even if it isn't like a direct connection. So I really just connected two things immediately, and I knew that there would be many more that would follow. And so today I kind of followed that thread out this morning. I put sort of a bunch of links kind of together as to like the train of that my mind started to follow. And I think it turned out A, to be kind of interesting, but B, it sort of did exactly what I thought it might do. And my purpose for doing this with you guys is not just so you can see how mind works and we can be entertained by it, maybe a little bit enlightened, but at least as long as it's entertaining. I'm not claiming to know the truth or that what I say is the right way, but it's just a different way to think about things. And sometimes we get it right, but at least we try to make it interesting and entertaining, right? But part of the reason I'm doing this is because I believe you can all do this too. And maybe you have a different personality than me. And so the way you will put things together, would be different than I do it. Or, maybe you're not as just sort of naturally entertaining at this as I am. But I've had enough people come to me now with interesting characters or unusual experiences in their life that I'm able to very quickly and very easily do this same thing with the factors in their life that I do in mine. And so it's like a process or a skill that everyone can do, and you can find your own style, and you can do it different than I do it or whatever it is. But it's a way to sort of understand things and classify things in your own mind as you're trying to practice synchromysticism, or just sort of unwind or rewrite the story of your own life, kind of, make yourself the hero of your own story, or whatever, however you like to think about that. So let's get this started with the Instagram video that I saw. Let's see, how do I make it? I'm gonna have to just hit restart when I pull it up for you guys. So this was the Instagram video that I saw that sort of started it. Here we go.
From New York to Brazil, Buenos Aires, and then Antarctica without ever coming up to the surface for air. And you can do it all at way more than 1,000 miles an hour on magnetic levitation trains, otherwise called Maglev. One thing he told me, he went from Virginia to Los Angeles in 45 minutes. Do the math, 3,000 miles an hour. Most people don't even believe that there's a tunnel network. There are there are hundreds of thousands of miles of tunnel systems. You can go from New York to Brazil.
Okay, so sorry the volume's a little low. I have it turned up as high as I could on my computer. I'm going to kind of go through this with you, but the very first thing that I know, for those who aren't aware of this, maglev trains are something that, at least as long as I've been sort of researching into the lesser known, or at this point they're not lesser known, but not the sort of traditional narrative about like MK Ultra and mind control programs. You always like pretty quickly find your way to this story about underground bases and pods or warp drive or maglev kind of trains that can move you long distances in very short times. And those stories always had some resonance for me, right? And so when I saw this video, the first thing, like, my mind did not go to these maps. My mind went to this video part, this part in the middle, that is showing the underground chambers that the maglev chains move through, and how there's this sort of black and white spiral. Okay, that's all my mind was paying attention to at first. And it immediately made me think of this symbolism that has always been used around MK Ultra, right? So if you look up, if you go looking into symbolism around MK Ultra, you will often find something like this, right? Some of these kinds of symbolisms that always involve spirals or vortexes or things that look like sort of time warp tunnels or whatnot, right? And you find this both in like the symbolism that's used in pop culture, but also people use this for their titles for books, and there's a lot of music that is made now about this, right? I found this other sort of interesting symbol, right? That kind of looks sort of like that four lobe shape that I like, but it's like four of the spirals, right? And so there's always been a lot of symbolism like that. And then a few days after I saw this original Instagram post, I saw this one, which I thought was interesting, right? Which is a similar spiral. Um, and it's a sign for a symbol that this artist is using for ether, right? And he's relating it to the electric universe, ancient gods, and DMT. And for me, all of this stuff, maglev trains, underground bases, for me relates to my understanding of some of the projects and programs and their use of energy, sound, light, drugs, all of that kind of stuff. So between these two Instagram posts, and we look into the symbolism, right? It arrives me sort of at this place that I feel resonates for me as experiences that I have had, and trying to get to the not, if not to the bottom of, a deeper understanding of for myself. And that doesn't mean that the way I understand it is true for everybody else. I'm just like talking about where I'm at with it or what I'm thinking about, right? And there's also a book that's come up a couple of times for me in researching some of the lesser known projects of MK Ultra, and I will get into some of this as part of my upcoming series. I have a series that I'll be working on that is really starting to come together. And some of the sort of primer episodes will be going out over the next little bit for my supporters. And probably the first public episodes will be sometime in April or May. But I actually did just post over on my Patreon and locals the first episode of the new season of Just the Three of Us with Nish. And that this season of that show is going to be used as sort of a primer as well. So if you would like to check that out, you can go to patreon.com/offplanetmedia or emilymoyer.locals.com. And I have a free week on Patreon or a free month on locals. There's promo codes in the description box after this show is over. I'll put them there if you guys want to go listen to that and check out some of what I'll be talking about. But this other book that I always think about when I think of that spiral or vortex symbolism is this book called The Laws of Mental Domination. And I have a feeling that this may have been one of the books that was commissioned by one of the sub-projects of MK Ultra. I don't know this for sure. Maybe during the research I do for my upcoming series, I'll get to the place where I can say yes or no. But this was also a part of like a topic that was pushed forward a few years back when there's a DJ named Bass Nectar who got into a lot of hot water for, let's just say, some not kosher behavior with people. And then there started to be more publicly a lot of questions about technologies and symbolisms that he was using in his music and shows, that people who understand how certain aspects of mind control or use of sonics and optics in order to move people from one space to another can be used. It had been a discussion we were having for years, and then this kind of came forward. I think there's an Instagram page that's all about it. I can't remember. It was called like Evidence Against Bass Nectar. And that was where I first became acquainted with this book and looked into it a little bit, especially after my friend Masaki told me some things about it, or kind of pointed it out to me. So, okay. So maglev trains create this visual effect that also reminds me of MK Ultra symbolism, and that another person who about the same period of time connected through their art to ether, electricity, and DMT. Okay. And then also in this first one here, it is just interesting that part of what they're talking about here is Elon Musk's Boring Company. And there's also a company that Elon Musk had, I don't know what he's currently doing with it exactly, called Hyperloop, that connects to some of this. But we're going to start digging into what maglev technology is, why I'm interested in it and how I feel connected to it in a way. Oops, something is going on here. Hold on a second. I just messed something up. All right. Can you guys still, I'm going to stop the share for a second and start it again. So, okay. So Maglev technology is something that I feel resonant with or a connection to based on the location in Chatsworth where I went to summer camp that I talk about all the time, where Borough Flats is, where Rocketdyne used to be, where Boeing is now, where there's been a radiation spill in Chatsworth for, 40 years now, supposedly, and an uncontrolled one. Um, I feel like that was something that was present there and that I somehow came into contact with. But then I also have a member of my family through marriage. This is not someone that I'm close to. I don't even know if it's someone I think it's possible I met him one time, but I've been aware of him for many, many years. And I've always looked into him a little bit. But in the last few years, particularly since his death, I've looked into him a little bit more. And since I have moved back from the place of thinking I know what everyone is doing and why they're doing it and assigning intent to it, just looking and going, okay, what are they doing and how are they doing it, to try to understand the context under which these technologies were developed, being used, whatever it is. And I started to get a lot further with understanding sort of the entirety of what might be going on here. So the person that I'm talking about, right, I'm just gonna screen share a little bit here. And for people who follow my work regularly know I've talked about this person before, right? This is the father of a cousin of mine through marriage. His name is Richard Freeman Post, was an American physicist notable for his work in nuclear fusion, plasma physics, magnetic mirrors, magnetic levitation, magnetic bearing design, and direct energy conversion. All of these are really interesting topics, and I realize I should probably make another video sometime just digging into what each of these things are and why it's interesting that he worked on them. Post was a winner of the James Clerk Maxwell Prize for Plasma Physics and led the Controlled Thermonuclear Research Group at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory for 23 years. He held a total of 34 patents in the fields of nuclear fusion, particle accelerators, and electronic and mechanical energy store. Okay. He joined so he went to Pomona College and then graduated from Stanford and immediately went right to work at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory at right about the same time it opened. They opened in 1952. He, as far as I understand from the family information, he worked there from the day it opened until the day he died. So he joined the staff there at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory as the leader of the Controlled Thermonuclear Research Group until 1974. So from 1952 to 1974. During this time, he developed many of the concepts behind magnetic mirrors and direct energy conversion. He worked with Marshall Rosenbluth to develop the stability of plasma inside mirror machines. From 1974 to 1987, he was Deputy Associate Director of the Magnetic Fusion Program at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. This was a heavily funded effort by the United States Department of Energy to build a succession of magnetic mirror machines, including the Mirror Fusion Test Facility and the Tandem Mirror Facility. After 1987, Post was senior scientist in the Magnetic Fusion Energy Program. He has held advisory roles at NASA, the National Academy of Sciences, and the United States Air Force. His notable works include inductrack and magnetically levitated flywheels. Okay, so we'll stop there for now on him. But what's interesting is, let's do this. Let's go first and look a little bit into what magnetic levitation is, and then we'll go back to some of his specific work for a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to do the brief summary here. Just to be clear, I don't use Wikipedia as the be all and end all for all of my research, but when I'm just jumping around trying to connect the dots, I look to see how many things touch on one another, and then when I decide the parts of whatever I find that I want to dig deeper, then I go then I go sort of off-roading more. But it's a good place just to get an idea of what something is or what people believe it to be. And then you can move on from there. And oftentimes you find evidence that sort of contradicts some of the points, but it sort of led you on your way. Okay, magnetic levitation or magnetic suspension, they're the same things, is a method by which an object is suspended with no support other than magnetic fields. Magnetic force is used to counteract the effects of gravitational force and any other forces. The two primary issues involved in magnetic levitation are lifting forces, providing an upward force sufficient to counteract gravity, and stability, ensuring that the system does not spontaneously slide or flip into a configuration where the lift is neutralized. Magnetic levitation is used for maglev trains, contactless melting, magnetic bearings, and for product display purposes. Okay. And then it goes into, and I read quite a bit of this today, like the different ways one can achieve lift and stability when trying to achieve magnetic levitation. And there's some interesting stuff in here. And then it gets into what maglev transportation, which is going to be what I'm focused on here today. There are other interesting things related to magnetic levitation, but for today, I'm just focusing on the transportation. Maglev or magnetic levitation is a system of transportation that suspends, guides, and propels vehicles, predominantly trains, using magnetic levitation from a very large number of magnets for lift and propulsion. This method has the potential to be faster, quieter, and smoother than wheeled mass transit systems. The technology has the potential to exceed 6,400 kilometers per hour if deployed in an evacuated tunnel. So an evacuated tunnel was what we were looking at in the beginning with the spirals in it. If not deployed in an evacuated tube, the power needed for levitation is usually not a particularly large percentage, and most of the power needed is used to overcome air drag, as with any other high-speed train. Some maglev Hyperloop prototype vehicles are being developed as part of the Hyperloop pod competition in 2015 to 2016 and are expected to make initial test runs in an evacuated tube later in 2016. Okay, so there's some of these experimental maglev Hyperloop evacuated tubes at various places around the world. And there's more interesting things to sort of understand here about the process and the history and some of the like ideas about it from antiquity that have led up to sort of where we are now that are interesting to read about. But for now, we'll go back to Richard Post, and to his notable works include something called inductrack. Okay, so if we go over here and look at what inductrack is, right? Inductrack is a passive fail-safe electrodynamic magnetic levitation system using only unpowered loops of wire in the track and permanent magnets arranged into Halbach arrays on the vehicle to achieve magnetic levitation. The track can be in one or of two configurations, a ladder track and a laminated track. The ladder track is made up of unpowered Litz wire cables, and the laminated track is made out of stacked copper or aluminum sheets. There are three designs. inductrack 1, which is optimized for high-speed operation, inductrack 2, which is more efficient at lower speeds, and inductrack 3, which is intended for heavy loads at low speed. Inductrack was invented by a team of scientists at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory in California, headed by physicist Richard F. Post, for use in maglev trains based on technology used to levitate flywheels. At constant velocity, power is required only to push the train forward against air and electromagnetic drag. At above a minimum speed, as the velocity of the train increases, the levitation gap, lift force, and power used are largely constant. The system can lift 50 times the magnet weight. Okay, so it goes into a lot of description here about how it works, right? And what's interesting is this technology was developed by General Atomics, which sounds a lot to me like massive dynamic or general dynamic, massive dynamic being from Fringe. So it gets into a lot of things here and connects it to Hyperloop. But the most interesting part for me and my personal story on the flip side of it, like obviously getting there through Richard Post, on the flip side is this little bit right here, evolution of inductrack. Depending on the application, lift to drag ratio at low speed or higher speed are favored. The three variations of the inductrack are designed for different purposes. The inductrack 1 was designed for high-speed trains. The lift-to-drag ratio lowers while speed increases. The inductrack 2 has more capabilities of levitation at relatively low speed for use in individual PRT or urban transport and uses a cantilever track. The Induct 3 track is designed for high load and cargo and with track only partly cantilevered to sustain high loads. Okay, what's interesting about this is the PRT stands for Personal Rapid Transit, right? And the college that I went to, my freshman year of college, where I was on the gymnastics team, West Virginia University, was the first place in the United States to have personal rapid transit. This was one of the interesting things that kind of caught my attention when I visited there. The way that I ended up on the gymnastics team at Morgantown, was that someone who was a coach at my private club ended up moving there to coach the gymnastics team. And I went to visit her and ended up deciding that after having thought I didn't want to do college gymnastics, that I did, right? But I'm not saying I went there because of the PRT, but it was one of the weird, unique things about the place that kind of caught my attention, right? Like if you were going to say like the top 3 interesting things about West Virginia University that might make you want to go there if you're a person from a big city who normally wouldn't like a place like that, this was kind of like a weird phenomenon for me that really caught my attention, right? So Morgantown PRT is a personal rapid transport system in Morgantown, West Virginia. The system connects the 3 campuses of West Virginia University and the city's downtown area. Developed from the Alden Star car and built by a consortium led by Boeing Vertol. And for people who followed along, Boeing is at the heart of a lot of my stories, as they are at the location in Chatsworth that I speak at. The driverless system was a government-funded experiment in PRT systems. Upon its opening in 1975 with 3 stations, it had a fitful start, being 3 years behind schedule and costing 3 to 4 times more than estimated. It was expanded in 1978 to its current 5 stations. The system achieved reliability to upwards of 98% for most of its life. Its reliability declined in the 2000s, dipping to 90% by 2015, and it gained a reputation for unreliability. In response, a renewal project was approved in 2012. I'm not going to go on about that, but what's interesting about this all is that I did not know that Boeing had anything to do with the PRT until I got into a conversation either on a show I did a few years ago with Andy Colvin or in preparation for it. And suddenly when I realized that Boeing was responsible for this PRT, like there started to be another layer of the story to how I ended up in Morgantown and what my life was crazy at that point and what was going on, right? So these personal rapid transit systems are an expression of inductrack, right? Now, what they're doing these days are much more advanced than what they were doing when this was built in 1975, which also happens to be the year I was born. And even this project at this point is more sophisticated. Like they have, it looks different now. Like when I was there, it looked kind of, you see like the old cars that I was on when I was there. All the pictures are of the newer cars. Yeah, I mean, I guess it is kind of what it looked like, but I do think it's been updated now. And in my head, it's just like, this is the part you see above ground, and below ground, there's something else going on that might be the, version, the version that's more highly advanced in terms of technology. Because of the nature of what the environment and the ground is like there, it seems like a likely place. This is what it looked like when I was there. Old. Now it's a little bit newer looking. It looks like Legoland now, right? Okay, so I've connected sort of these dots in this way, right? And this also connects to like what is going on right now with Elon Musk and the Boring Company and Hyperloop, right? And here's Hyperloop, Texas. And of course, obviously I live in Texas now. I don't live in Chatsworth and I don't live in Morgantown. And Texas seems to be the new center of Hyperloop technology, though I do believe there's been a change in what it was originally like intended to be. It was originally something going on in Los Angeles and in Texas through some sort of meetup between Hyperloop and Virgin or whatever it is. A lot of that seems to be canceled, and there seems to be something different going on. But that doesn't mean that these technologies are not at play. Okay. All right. So the other technology that is mentioned in the Richard Post biography is magnetically levitated flywheels. And I know less about the flywheels than I do about the other stuff, but one of the things that's really interesting is it seems to be about like storing and perpetuating energy. So I'm going to read a little bit about it right here. A flywheel is a mechanical device that uses the conservation of angular momentum to store rotational energy, a form of kinetic energy proportional to the product of its moment of inertia and the square of its rotational speed. In particular, assuming the flywheel's momentum of inertia is constant, i.e. a flywheel with fixed mass and second moment of area revolving around some fixed axis, then the stored rotational energy is directly associated with the square of its rotational speed. Since a flywheel serves to store mechanical energy for later use, it is natural to consider it as a kinetic energy analog of an electrical capacitor. Once suitably abstracted, this shared principle of energy storage is described in the generalized concept of an accumulator. As with other types of accumulators, a flywheel inherently smooths sufficiently small deviations in the power output of a system, thereby effectively playing the role of a low-pass filter with respect to the mechanical velocity, angular or otherwise, of the system. More precisely, a flywheel's stored energy will donate a surge in power output upon a drop in power input, and will conversely absorb any excess power input in the form of rotational energy. Okay, so a lot of these things for me, right? Like I'm very, very well aware of what, like, at this point, can we say the general public has an idea about what MK Ultra is, but at least the alternative reality sort of has, a range of ideas about what it is, but all of them include sort of mind control and some sort of like, weaponization of a human being in manipulating them to carry out acts either outside of their control or that seem to be in opposition to what would be the best interests of the human being. And I'm not saying that there's no truth to that, but I am saying that I think there's like a lot of other stuff going on there. And a lot of the other stuff going on, in my opinion, is always related to power and genetics, energy, whether fusion, genetic engineering, and extended sort of states or abilities that humans can attain. Now, sure, all of those things can be weaponized and used in this way or whatever, but that isn't all that they can be used for, right? It would seem to me that inquisitive people would want to know every possible state or ability that can be achieved and every way a human being can interact with their environment or with stimuli or energy fields or whatnot, right? And that if you undertake studies surrounding these things, and this could be with a lot of use of technology, sound, light, energy fields, drugs, both natural and synthesized, music, like all kinds of stuff, there's going to be an enormous record generated about all of the things you tried and all of the things you discovered, and that not all of them would fit into this like weapons of war to be perpetrated on people outside of their consent and to go against what would be beneficial for them. Sure, like that's part of it. But I'm interested in the rest. Like I want to know, like I'm kind of bored of what we're allowed to know and what they want us to know and whatever, what the worst possible case scenario is. And I'm just ready to see the whole enchilada, right? And so I'm very interested in topics around, 0 point energy and the other kinds of technologies that are associated to that, meaning that are worked on in the same locations, that will be enabled if 0 point energy is attained, that are used to create whatever is necessary to achieve 0 point energy, and then how this relates to humans, right? Because I do think that like anything that can be achieved out there sort of can be achieved here. And I do believe that like a lot of the processes that are being worked on are things that were inspired by something that the humans already do, that has already happened naturally in the universe or whatever, right? So how do we connect to this kind of technology that Richard Post was working on, right? And because you can see like the entirety of his career, nuclear fusion, plasma physics, these are both topics that are really popular right now in in alternative communities. Like plasma is having its moment, right? And I've been enjoying talking about it for the last year or so, and I have a lot of things that are going to be related to that coming up, and stuff that I'll be doing. But I've been interested in fusion, particularly, my interest in fusion first started with cold fusion, and then I started looking into all the other forms of fusion and fission and whatnot. But all of these technologies, nuclear fusion, plasma physics, magnetic mirrors, levitation, right, direct energy conversion, like how do humans relate to this? Not just what could we use this for, but like, are we part of the process? And people who've been following me for a long time know that I think of, some humans as being like particle accelerators, right? And that some humans are sort of more superconductive or have less electrical resistance than others. And a couple of years ago, I even discovered the connection between DNA and powering nuclear fusion reactors that are called tokamak reactors, right? And it was an idea that was being proposed. And for those, who followed along, you guys might remember this article that I kind of went on and on about for a long time called DNA May Be the Key to Unlocking Fusion Power. And the way in which DNA was going to be used to unlock, like I was just kind of reminding myself of this today. It isn't that they were like gonna put DNA into like a fusion reactor and make it go, right? It was, basically one of the things that DNA is really good for is to like create these carbon nanotubes. Let me see if I can. Sometimes it's like, sometimes you think you understand it and then like you stop thinking about it for a minute and then you kind of like forget. But biological proteins like DNA have evolved over billions of years to manipulate and construct complex carbon structures at the molecular level. For a long time, scientists suspected they could use custom strands of DNA to act as molecular factories and construct the complex carbon nanostructures needed for these technologies, but struggle to do so. It is hard to make custom DNA strands and even harder to make them do what you intended. However, scientists at the University of Virginia School of Medicine have finally made a breakthrough and successfully used DNA to build carbon nanotubes. Okay, so I'm going to go down here to a little bit about the carbon nanotubes. These DNA carbon nanotubes, so actually, I'm just going to read this whole part, otherwise it's not going to make sense. Okay, to be clear, these weren't just any old carbon nanotubes. They were carbon nanotube lattices, which are of particular interest to electrical engineers and nuclear fusion projects because they are high temperature superconductors. Again, let me explain. A superconductor is a material that has zero electrical resistance, a feat that in technological terms is very hard to achieve. You see, electrical resistance comes from electrons bumping into the conductor's atoms, and imparting some of their kinetic energy into the atom, which then heats the conductor up and slows down the electron and the flow of electricity. So to get zero electrical resistance, the conductor atoms must be moved out of the way. One way we can do this is by supercooling certain types of conductors. This stops the conductor's atoms' chaotic motion due to the very low temperature and allows them to line up in a crystalline lattice-like structure. Within this structure, there are open channels where the electrons can move freely without bumping into an atom, giving the material zero electrical resistance. Now, having zero electrical resistance is hugely useful. It means we can construct super efficient circuits, incredibly powerful electromagnets, and even build quantum computers. But it takes a massive amount of energy to get superconductors cold enough to work, making their application inefficient and immensely expensive. So, like, basically, the something that our DNA does is good for creating a material that would help cooling these superconductors, right? So this is where DNA-made carbon nanotubes can help. You see, carbon nanotube lattices have the potential to be high-temperature superconductors. Their unique construction and high electrical conductivity mimic the crystalline structure of supercooled superconductors, which means they have superconducting properties even at room temperature or possibly higher temperatures. If such a material were used in the electromagnetics of a tokamak, it would massively reduce the energy demands, making it far more efficient, to the extent that it could mean fusion reactors could produce far more energy than they consume, making them a viable energy technology, right? It's still far away from being something that happens, but like it is interesting that somebody would think to use DNA, to use something that we think of as being part of the structure of living beings to power machines, right? And how would somebody come up with this idea? And for me, it's always been, well, maybe it's been from observing people's behavior sort of in the field, in that environment. I'm sure there's other ways too. So it's just not only that, but that's what my mind thinks of, right? And, we always hear about all of these projects are conducted in underground bases with mind control and, whatever it is, making super soldiers or, doing experiments with drugs and anechoic chambers, or if the flavor of research that you've gotten into is more along the lines of sexual abuse and torture, it's always coming down to these in the underground bases or whatever it is. Also, if you have done research on particle accelerators or looked into the kind of topics that FPV Angel talks about, those are also underground and like almost in these sort of bases that have teams of people working on them. So when you have people in these high energy environments or where these kinds of things are being experimented with, sometimes the people become part of even like not the experiment that like the experiment that they were conducting. People are going to have different reactions to being in that environment. So when I had read that article, and I had been looking a lot into particle accelerators, I was like, well, maybe there are some people whose like genetics allow them to be almost like this low electrical resistance, right? Large energy field, like big, strong energy fields can kind of move through them easier than other people without deleterious effects. And I've, done lots of shows where I talk about things like that. And those are still ideas that I play with. Even if I don't have it exactly right, it inspires a line of thinking that I enjoy, right? And so, but I have come to the place where I do believe like some people have things that they're made up of that are more or less conductive than other people. And that doesn't make anyone better or worse than anyone else. It's just something someone can do that someone else can't. And that other person can do something that this person can't, right? So I just kind of reminded myself about some of this, and I looked up, do some people conduct more electricity than others, right? And yes, some people conduct electricity differently than others because of factors like body type, skin resistance, and how electricity passes through the body. And this got into men versus women and size and what your skin is like. And one of the really interesting things about the skin type is the pigmentation of skin affects how it conducts electricity, which led me to an interesting article about the power of melanin. And for people who have followed along for a long time, melanin, neuromelanin are topics that I'm interested in, and the what is it called? The melanin, the pigment, I can't think of the prismatic melanin that Kalinda used to talk about, neuromelanin. I've often wondered if people with highly melanated skin process light and information differently, for a variety of different purposes and with a variety of different outcomes. So I thought that was interesting. And then I also wanted to know, can DNA itself be superconductive? And again, basic search here because we're just playing a fun mind map game. While DNA itself is not naturally superconducting, research has shown that under specific conditions, particularly when brought into close proximity with superconducting materials, DNA can exhibit proximity-induced superconductivity, meaning it can act like a superconductor due to its interaction with the superconducting material at very low temperatures. Essentially, the superconducting properties are induced in the DNA molecule through contact with a superconductor, right? Now, some of the more recent stuff, including in this article, they're talking about the DNA connection at low temperatures, but maybe even at room temperature or higher temperatures. So that tends toward the idea that I was throwing out there, that people in proximity to where experiments with things like superconductivity, which is what maglev trains run on, or maglev, right? If you guys have ever seen, let me see if I can just find like a quick video of that superconductor, right? Like it's these cold things that like fly around on it's kind of cool to watch them. Let's look at a superconductor. All right, let's see. Let's look at one that's I just want to watch a short video. Let's see if I can find a short video. Let's just look at this. All right, here we go.
In the last
Oh, hold
video,
on. Here we go. It's a short one. Wow, my computer's doing what? Can you guys see the screen? I'm just going to start the screen share again, just in case. I don't want to. All right, here we go. Okay, so that wasn't the one. I think this is more the one that I'm talking. Let's look at this one. Hold on.
A Chinese research
There you
group
go.
has recently made a major breakthrough in the field of high-temperature superconductivity,
There we go. This is the
finding
high temperature
nickel-based
one.
materials capable of superconductivity at atmospheric pressure. Superconductivity is a phenomenon where, when the temperature drops below a critical level, certain materials exhibit zero electrical resistance and perfect diamagnetism. This means electricity can flow without losing energy. By manipulating the atomic structure, the team successfully stabilized the material at normal atmospheric pressure while maintaining its superconducting properties. It took the research team 3 years to develop this technology. This breakthrough paves the way for revolutionary advancements in energy and transportation. A
Okay.
Chinese research group has
There we go.
recently
All
made a
right,
major
so I
breakthrough.
think you guys get where I'm going with that. Hold on, let me stop that. Okay, I think you guys get where I'm going with that. And then the other thing was interesting about the flywheel technology and things like inertia and angular momentum and storing energy so that when a machine, something that is needing energy, it can provide it. And if something has too much energy, it grabs it and accumulates it, right? These are all really interesting things to obviously be working on. But I often wonder, like, people who have been in that environment, what are the experiences that they have had? And it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of them are anomalous in nature. And so this might be why you have in the same location where there's fusion reactors or particle accelerators or maglev being experimented on, people in projects or people having experiences that they think are related to projects in which they're experiencing, you know, something that seems like temporal anomalies, dimensional anomalies, paranormal type experiences outside of time and whatnot. And to me, these things all are connected. And that whole train of thought that I just took you down came from me seeing that Maglev evacuated tunnel that reminded me of so much of the symbolism that is used for MK Ultra. So, rant done. I'm gonna go and see if I still have some of you with me. I hope I haven't. I hope that was interesting and informative and made sense. And that I haven't bored people to death, because whenever I'm doing this by myself, I never know how it's going because I can't see how anyone's face is responding to what I have said. So I'm going to read through the comments here real quick. And if you guys have thank you, Bubs, Bird, Bear, AKA Charlemagne, Charlotte, thank you for the $10. I appreciate it. If you guys have comments that you want me to address, questions, and of course, if you'd like to give me a super chat, I'll take those too. All capital letters, and I will respond for sure. Let me read through and see what people were saying while I was going. All right, let's see. All right. Glad to see lots of my friends here tonight. Thank you guys for joining me. Let's see. It's easier for me to read them really when they're all capital. I don't know why I have so much trouble. Did I ever have Lynn Davenport on? No, but I know who she is, and I'm sure at some point she and I will have a conversation, because I know we are looking at a lot of the same people, places, and things, but probably from very different perspectives. I'm sure at some point I will cross paths with her and that we will chat. Let's see. Magnetic mirrors for $500, please. Absolutely. Well, what's interesting, Jana, you just hit on another connection, and I don't know if you are saying this because you know that, or if you're just saying this coincidentally. But the cousin of mine who is Richard Post is her father. She used to write the questions for Jeopardy. So there you go. Michael Levin's work on bioelectric fields is something to look into. I think it has to do with FEP, or free energy principle. Yes, I'm interested in some of the stuff Michael Levin says. Once you get over some of the other things he says, then some of the things he says are quite interesting. And in fact, I have a live stream he was going to be on tonight, marked to watch later or tomorrow. Okay, Meredith, nice to see you. Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. People popping over from FPV's stream. Oh, FPV in the house. Nice to see you, my friend. Think about you guys all the time. Every day appreciative for the things I've learned from you. Some of them I still don't understand, but instinctively something inside of me does. So lots of people have strange relationships with electricity, right? Some people have different responses to electricity. Some people are like different to magnetism, and then we get into electromagnetism, right? We are not all the same. And one of the things when we can like really start to look at each other as individuals with respect for that individuality, and not have to have, because like someone has something special about them means that the other person isn't special, because I truly believe that they're interested in all of our genetics, because each of us have, let's just call it a gene key, but not quite the Richard Rudd thing. Our genetics are the key to, I think, opening up realities, or to accessing hyperdimensional, space, time. I don't even know what the right language to use is. If you say one thing, you'll offend somebody, whatever it is. But each of us have access to a different layer of the cake, or a different room in the hotel. And so there's like, not only is there not junk DNA within our own DNA, but nobody's DNA is junk, right? We all have a different thing going on. DNA and D-Wave computers. Oops, something just popped. All right, what did I just do? Okay, hold on a second. I hate when the chat room thing jumps and freezes, and then I don't know. Okay, now I've lost the chat room. There it is. Okay, let's see. I was trying to, all right, let's see. People, so yep, somebody drains battery watches, street lights turn on, right? Like I know people, I've known people my whole life who have weird stuff like that, right? Or the other thing is that like just some people, whenever you're with them, like weird things start to happen that don't necessarily have to do with electricity per se, but like chaos ensues anytime they're around, or like weird things that make no sense according to time, or whatever happens, right? What kind of, from Dina, what kind of experiences do you think people at these facilities doing this would have? I think there's any range of possibilities. I love, just to sort of, par ejemplo, I love like watching Fringe, that episode from that series from 2008, and I love the TV series Dark, right? Fringe was obviously, kind of a dramatized, entertaining look at some of these outgrowths of the experiments that were part of quote MK Ultra or whatnot. And I think there was a lot of truth nuggets laid down there. And then I love Dark because it's about what happens to the people in a town when a nuclear facility gets built, right? And some people start having time travel experiences, some people get cancer, all kinds of chaos ensued. And I think that that's sort of what these kinds of energy fields can do. They affect people differently, but they affect everyone. And I think when we start looking at sort of the truth about our own reality, and when society started to look a little weird, and when anomalous specific kinds of things started to become more common, it was probably as these technologies or knowledge about them increased and they became more ubiquitous. Like, I think that this is just my own personal story. I'm not saying that because I think it makes it true, but Charles Manson was hanging out in the area of Chatsworth that I always talk about. Literally, there's a tunnel there called the Manson Tunnel. And if you guys watch the TV series Dark, I think the main character in the TV series Dark was very much a Manson type character. I think it's entirely possible that on top of all the right things he was doing in the linear reality here, that he was also trafficking information, possibly across timelines or dimensions, through that area in Chatsworth that seems to be a portal of some sort or another. Okay, let's see. Do I write down the thoughts that you have as they come up? No. I pretty much don't. Like, all of my notes are just swimming around in my head, and it's like a chaotic mess in there. And I'm recognizing that, like, to get to the next level of work for myself, I'm going to have to come up with a better organizing system than just like only my mind palace. I'm going to have some sort of indexing system to make it easier to share with you guys. And I have, fortunately, some friends in the alternative media who deal in similar kinds of topics who are more organized than I am. So I might pick their brains as to a method I can come up with, but I'm not super organized. All right. Let's see. You're welcome, Kim Rose. Hi, FPV. Let's see. My gene key turned into a Folger's Adams key, a Folger Adams key. All right. Hi, Michael, Sister Nina. Nice to see you. Let's see, Jerusha, I agree with you, Emily, that all the machines are just attempting to copy what special people can do automatically. Definitely have a special relationship with electricity. Yeah, I mean, like, technology is always either mimicking something that is happening like in the realm, some people call it the universe or whatever it is, or what's happening like with people. Like, that technology is always mimicking nature and people. People are part of nature, right? Like, we get into this thing where like we're like, I had a download, and so we're like thinking of ourselves as being like computers. No, computers are like people. They process information, they categorize things, they're able to do computations and organize and whatnot, right? The humans are pretty high technology. Okay, I think that, can I go any further in the chat room? I can't tell if there's like, oh, here we go. Let's see. Okay, no, I think I'm at the end of the comments that people have left. So, all right, where are we? All right. Why does the chat room keep disappearing for me? Okay, now I don't see any chat room. So I guess that might mean we're kind of at the end of the road here. All right. Let me just see if I can try reload. Oh, there it is. It's back. Okay. It's back. All right. Let's see what we got. You thought that I said Friends? No, I've never. I have seen like one episode of Friends, Sarah. I said Fringe. For those who have not watched that series, I still think it's relevant and pretty good. And sort of is an outgrowth of a lot of ways of like Twin Peaks and X-Files, right? And then I just love Dark. Dark is definitely one of my favorite TV series I've ever seen. I also like that series from last year called Dark Matter on Apple TV that gets into a lot of this as well, although it's a little bit more sort of psychological and substance based than it is like displaying technologies. Like there's a box, there's a technology, but it also is involving a lot of drugs or, sort of medication that they take and then your psychological state. But this is how I see things. Like I don't think that this is all that's going on here. Right. I think that in addition to gaining new ways to have and use energy in this reality, there's also a lot of exploring of others, whether that be other dimensions of reality, other temporal sort of realities. Like I think there, I don't know, I don't have a perfect like theory or map sort of built out. Like I think there's lots of things going on simultaneously. I think there are a lot of possibilities. Um, and a lot of it does have to do with perspective and angle and sort of the condition that your person, your vessel, your body meets a stimuli or meets a situation and the way you're sort of able to interact with it. I think the world is a much funnier place than we'd be led to believe in versions like 1, 2, 3, 6, and 9 that we've been fed about reality. All right. I've been going for about an hour. I think I'm probably gonna stop now unless anybody else has looks like there hasn't been a new comment in the box for a bit, which means probably they're there, but I can't see them. I'm gonna try reloading the chat room one time and we'll see if I'm able to do that and see anything, we can keep going, but if not, I don't know why that happens. Oh, let's see. It's freezing up on me. All right, guys, I think we're probably at the end here. Okay. Thank you. What did you say? Later, thank you for Laura's telling me that you sent a super chat. Laura, can you bring your phone here? Maybe I can look at
I'm doing it.
Okay, yay. Let's do that. I can keep going for a minute because I can look at Laura's phone. All right, let's see. I know where the last comment I saw was, so I'm gonna go there and then
Shout out to
All
Beth
right.
Irwin.
hi Beth Irwin.
She's checking in tonight. So.
Laura's friend Beth
From
likes my
astrology
shows
class.
from her astrology class. Yay. All right, let's see. What do I think Earth vortexes are? I think they can be different things for different people, right? Like I've been to some of the places where people are like, "Oh, there's a vortex here, and can't you feel that crazy energy?" And I felt nothing. And then I've been to other places that nobody ever talks about, and I've been like, "I don't know what's going on here, but something's going on." And so again, for me, it's the interaction between the person and their environment. So like whatever's in the ground there, right? Whatever elements, minerals, and how that interacts with what's inside of you, because we all have different trace minerals, amounts of certain metals and whatever in our blood. We all have different makeups in terms of our genetics, but also in terms of like muscle and fat and bone and tissue and whatever. So there's no two similar ways, right? As more similar you are to someone, the interaction could be similar, but two different people are going to react to the same environment entirely differently. Just like some people like the way something feels and some people don't. Some people like the way this tastes, some people don't, blah, 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 right? So, all right, let's see. Uh, FPV says only the halos create the vortexes. Well, that's interesting. So then that would mean, so when you say only the halos, FPV, is that like only when you can see the halo in the sky because that's the symbol that the angel underneath is active, and that's when you feel the vortex. So that might be why I go someplace that somebody else is like, I felt crazy energy, but when I went there, I didn't. It was because there was no halo and therefore no active angel. That makes sense to me. All right. Yeah, large electromagnetic coils, kind of like what we were looking at earlier with the Maglev stuff, right? Let's see. I need to establish a training habit you do daily for a month. Okay, maybe I don't know if you're talking to me or someone else, but yes, you're right. I know, like, that's probably a good idea for me to do. That's what I do with exercise and things like that, but I need to do it with organization. Laner, thank you for the $10, Laner. You should, Jerusha, I can go to other places and see what people are doing when I'm asleep, like down to reading the files they are reading. Has happened while awake, but more common during sleep. Yep, I'm familiar with those kinds of experiences. For me, the best time is that place between waking and sleep, particularly like not when I'm on my way to sleep or on my way out of sleep, but if you ever just like lay down in the afternoon for a few minutes and you don't really fall asleep, but like you get to this weird space in between. I've had a lot of those experiences in sort of that state. Okay, let's see. I'd like to hear your take on Sabrina Wallace too. I don't have a take on Sabrina Wallace. I'm familiar with the topic that she is talking about. I became like at a certain point, a year and a half or 2 years ago, like people were like sending me things from her and demanding that I listen to them and have respond. And whenever that happens, I'm kind of like, eh. But now it's been a while, and so like I'm happy to go back and sort of take a look. I know the topic that she's speaking of, and I know that it's a topic that's been covered in a variety of ways for a really long time, long before she ever talked about it, but that she brought maybe a different sense of knowledge on some of those technologies because she had worked into it to the general discussion. So that's all I can really say about it. I have no opinion on her as a person or the way I haven't really, I think I read like a breakdown of something she had done, and that's why I know what she talks about, but I don't have a judgment on anything else. Thank you, Laner, for saying the show was great. Hi, Benjamin Balderson. Looking forward to seeing you next week. All right, let's see. Or what the angel is actually doing. Jerusha, thank you very much. That's so kind. Thank you, Jerusha. I really appreciate that. All right. All the ones below are creating vortexes, Emily. Effects will depend on what it's doing. Okay. Rainbow is created when the soul is integrated. Oh, yes. Jana is hailing Benjamin Balderson. All hail, right? All hail the heathen wizard. That's right. Let's see. Okay, thank you guys for all the nice comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the generous super chats. Thank you for making this not too hard or stressful for me. It felt like it went reasonably well, and I will be super happy when Danny is back next week and I have a face that I can see how whatever I'm saying is landing. That just feels more comfortable to me, but I will continue to work on this and get better. Thank you to all my friends who came to hang out, everyone. I appreciate when you show up. I know like a lot of it feels nice when colleagues and stuff come out, show up to hear what I have to say. So thank you. I appreciate all of you. Check out. I'm gonna put when this posts right now, I'll post in the description box links to Patreon and locals with the promo codes and stuff like that. If you guys want to go check out the new episode I just posted with Nish today called Chattery Little Bird. And it will be a great primer for my upcoming series. All right, guys, have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.